When I was asked to give this presentation, I was very tempted to say no. I mean, the future of obits is pretty bleak. First of all, it probably comes as no surprise to hear that many news organizations are going through financial difficulties. Due to the current state of the economy, ad revenues are down, print readership is on the wane, and the erection of paywalls, which were supposed to be the savior of the industry, has instead turned away the readers who were devoted to newspapers' online editions. In response, these publications are cutting back on content, laying off journalists, offering buyouts, and forcing those with institutional knowledge to retire. Add in the long hours and low pay, and it's not surprising that newspaper reporter was recently named the worst job in the nation. Over the last 20 years, the number of daily newspapers has steadily decreased. In 1990, there were 1,611 newspapers in the U.S. In 2009, there were just 1,387. If you ever want to depress yourself, visit these Wikipedia pages of now defunct publications in the US and Canada. Although the remaining news organizations are trying to cover the same amount of news with less staff and fewer resources, it simply cannot be done, or at least done well. As many of you know, obituary writers are being let go or reassigned to other desks. So now, when prominent people die, their stories are written by wire services, journalists who are unfamiliar with the form, or worse, relegated to the paid obit section, which lacks both character and objectivity. These factors could be a sign that obituary writing, as a career, is on the wane. But no. First, people continue to die. In that way, we will always have a little bit of job security. Second, readers love obits, particularly ones that are well written or professionally produced. And third, new technology is helping to keep the art of the obituary alive. In the past, obituaries generally came in two forms: a news obit, written by a staff reporter or staff obit writer, and published in the local newspaper. And then there was the death notice, which was written by the funeral home or family. Today, obituaries can take many forms. They can be a print obituary, published in the newspaper. It can be an online obituary, which allows readers to print, email, and share on social media. There are radio and TV obits, obituary blogs like my own, the Blog of Death, and then there are these new do-it-yourself memorial sites and apps, like If I Die, legacy memorial websites, Wonderful Life, virtual memorials, and My Ebit. They basically let people create their own page, or pages for people they've recently lost, and then post them on the web for others to leave memories behind. So what does the future hold? Whenever someone dies, famous or not, people who hear about it head to the web and search for the news. They want confirmation of the death and information about funeral arrangements, of course, but they also want to know more about the person, and they want to share in their grief. So how do we serve this audience? That's where our future lies. First, we can encourage news organizations to build up their obituary sections. The Readership Institute's impact study of readership shows that obituaries have the highest potential of all news items to grow readership. So if newspapers can do a better job in presenting this kind of news, they will see positive and overall readership results. So yes, run the print story and a photo in the newspaper. But for the online edition, provide more context with links, slideshows, audio and video interviews. Pull quotes from the deceased's blog or Twitter feed or Instagram page. Allow ample but moderated space for reader tributes. And keep all obits in front of newspaper paywalls. This may be specialized content, but readers, as well as the deceased's family and friends, will take great umbrage if they can't read an obit a week from now, or their tributes. So, what other areas can we focus on? I have some ideas. First, freelance obituary writing. This is a growing business opportunity geared towards serving people who do not have the skills, interest, or time to write their own obituary, and who have the cash handy to hire a professional. Professional obituary services like the ones run by Larkin Bradley, Salin Goes, Lisa Kimball, and M Memorial Services already have a toehold here, but this can certainly be adapted to a local level. Another option is to work for these online memorial sites. Many of these sites use a very simple template to create a multimedia remembrance page. Over time, these sites will likely hire a staff of obituary writers to handle requests for more professional stories, and this is where you can come in. Another option is to teach obituary writing classes. You can give the public expert guidance on how to write their own obituary, and these classes can be privately taught or coordinated with local community colleges and adult education schools. Another option is to teach a MOOC, or Massive Open Online Course. In this way, you can share the skills of obituary writing with hundreds or thousands of students from all over the world and earn an income doing so. Another option is to expand your focus. There are 360 million pets in the United States and about 8 million in Canada. These animals often become cherished parts of our family, and some publications have even begun offering obituaries to note their passing. So you could, in theory, become one of your country's top pet obituary writers. Another option is to build niche obit sites geared toward particular professions or hobbies. One of the most popular pages on my Facebook feed is called In Loving Memory Of. This space features death notifications of former students, teachers, and staff from my high school. This type of thing could easily be adapted to fit other communities and interest, like a site dedicated to providing obits of Boy Scouts or politicians or writers. Another area to consider is podcasting. Now, if you are unfamiliar with what podcasting is, it's basically radio on the internet. Except you don't need to be a part of a radio network. You can do it yourself. You can create the show, record it, and then post it online, and people can listen to it either by downloading it directly or from something like iTunes. So why not use this technology that we already have in our computers or in our phones to create podcast obituaries? I mean, if you have a voice for radio and a computer that records sound, creating a podcast that delivers an obit is pretty easy. I actually did this in the mid-aughts with a podcast I called Audio Obit. The podcast was basically a reading of the obits I featured on the Blog of Death, and turned out to be rather popular with people who would rather listen than read, and with the blind. Another option is to create a podcast that talks about the latest obits, such as the BBC Radio 4 podcast of The Last Word. This program, which airs every Friday at 4 p.m. and is hosted by Matthew Bannister, marks the lives of significant figures who have died recently. The program is also accessible on the web and on iTunes. Another option is to create a podcast devoted to interviewing the elderly and infirm, and then airing these conversations after the people die. This could actually be an ideal service to offer to retirement homes and hospice centers. Along the same lines, there is the video testimonial. You could use video to record stories about someone's life. In the movie My Life, starring Michael Keaton, his character learns he's going to die before his child is grown. So, he records a series of videos featuring advice to the unborn baby. Following the success of Schindler's List, Steven Spielberg founded the Survivors of the Shoah Visual History Foundation, a nonprofit organization with the goal of providing an archive of film testimony of as many Holocaust survivors as possible. As an obituary writer, you can do the same thing in your community. In the course of writing advance obits, go out and interview prominent people on video, then publish the interview after their death. In 2007, the New York Times began doing this with The Last Word. Since then, the series has profiled more than a dozen people to great success and acclaim. The next area I would like to focus on is something I call tombstone histories. Annie Leibovitz's American Music Collection was featured at the Experience Music Project in Seattle. The images of Lucinda Williams, Missy Elliott, and Iggy Pop were certainly stunning, but what made the project so extraordinary was that each photo included a code at the bottom for scanning with a special device. Once scanned, you could hear extra details about the subject, or snippets of their music, or notes from the photographer about the photo shoot. This idea can easily be adapted to obituaries. Writing and recording the obituaries onto a chip or into a QR code that could then be embedded into a tombstone or urn is already being done by a company called Your Tribute. With nearly everyone having access to a mobile phone, this could be a huge market and a great way to share obituaries. Imagine if someone could go back and write historical obits, code them in a QR code, and then affix the code to every grave in an old cemetery. Now, anyone passing by a boneyard can not only marvel at its beauty, but access the stories behind the stones as well. So those are just a few of the ideas that I came up with. I would love to hear from you if you have some. But basically, after, pondering the topic a little more, I began to be less depressed. So despite my earlier trepidation, the obituary business is not dying, but it is going through a transformative period. And it's important for us to remember that there is an audience of readers who want to know more about the recently deceased. We need to appeal to those readers and draw in new ones by using the latest technology to share these stories in a way that is informative and engaging. Thank you. But